This is the brand new 85mm lens from SIRUI. It is their first ever full frame lens with AF and features an aperture of f1.4. So the question that we need to answer today is, how does it stack up against those other third-party manufacturers and Sony themselves? And can this budget-friendly option actually compete? So this is from a brand new lineup of lenses from SIRUI called Aurora, as in like the Northern Lights. I'm guessing they have drawn that inspiration from it being full frame and having the aperture of f1.4, meaning it's going to be pretty damn good in low light. It comes in E, X and Z mount, but the one I have here, what I'm testing today, will be E mount, as I'll be testing it on my Sony cameras. My guess here would be that this 85mm has been made with photography first in mind, but that has never stopped us before from seeing what is capable from this lens in terms of video, and some of the best video lenses on the market today was made in this exact way. The design of this lens I personally am a fan of. It's made up of aluminium, or aluminum for my American people, and plastic. It's kind of a mixed. I would say it's just above what you would expect from the price point of this lens, and I think SIRUI have hit quite a good sweet point here, as you could definitely get better build quality and materials, but if that would have started taking that price up, then it kind of defeats the whole point of what this lens is trying to achieve. What is not expected at this price point though is some of the features of the lens itself. We do have an aperture ring on the body, and this can be declicked, which is a thumbs up for video users, as you can gradually change your exposure without any stops in your footage. We also have a button, which I did believe was a custom button. I think it is stuck to AF lock, but it's still great to see and does work great on my FX3 when I've tested it. And we do see a return of the USB-C port on the inside of the lens mount, which I just absolutely love from previous SIRUI lenses. This is great for updating firmware, which you may think may not be important for now, but in the future when they improve the motor technology and the algorithms of the AF, and think about even adding newer cameras as they get released, you can update your lens really simply without having to purchase any extra dock like you've had to in the past. The weight comes in at only 540 grams, which from my deep extensive research of just going to Google and Googling a few other 85mm f1.4s, I believe maybe the lightest one on the market. Correct me if I'm wrong though in the comments, because I'd love to know. But either way, I think weight really does matter when it comes to this style of lens, because so many photographers are going to just walk around the street snapping portraits with this lens, and I think it's a nice balance of does not feel too light that it's cheap and it feels quite expensive, but also it's not too heavy that you couldn't just roam around with it on your camera. Something else that's really good at this price point that comes in the box with this lens is, first of all, you get a lens hood, but that's kind of expected. But secondly, you get a UV filter to protect it, and thirdly, you get a 1/8 mist filter, which is like an $80+ add-on, I would say, thinking of how much that would cost you to go purchase. And we'll get more into this a bit later, but it really does bring something in terms of image quality. You do get a carry case / bag for the lens also, which again is probably okay not to include that at this price point, but they did. One thing I will say though is I kind of don't like the design. It all looks a bit uneven. The materials are great, and I do believe this would protect the lens just fine, but from a design perspective it's a bit messy, and yeah, not the biggest fan. I like the way it visually looks, and it does feel pretty well made. The weight is pretty perfect. It's light for an 85, but not too light that it feels cheap. And they've managed to keep the price down, which is fantastic. I guess none of that really matters though, until we find out what this lens can actually do. There's this thing in the world of Sony and third-party lenses when it comes to photos for definite, that they do slow them down. I believe when it comes to, is it the burst modes, they take less photos, or do they focus less on the photos? I'm not 100% sure, as photos are not my field, but a lot of people do say that that translates into the AF system when it comes to video. Maybe if you did a super control test and you like pixel peeped frame by frame, that could actually be true in terms of video, but I don't actually know. I've never tested that. But what I can tell you from my real world use using Sony and third-party lenses on a weekly basis on projects, I don't really notice a difference. I think if anyone had to ask me, I would say it's pretty identical in terms of Sigma to Sony, and that continues when it comes to SIRUI and the Aurora. The biggest compliment I can give to this 85mm is that when I'm swapping between my Sony glass and my Sigma glass and the Aurora, I just can't tell a difference. It's fast, it's snappy. I've had zero compatibility issues when using on my Burano and my FX3. Not even had a single message pop up on the screen saying not compatible, anything like that. I just attach and the aperture works. It works going all the way around to the A. It works on manually choosing the aperture, and the AF works just as normal. SIRUI told me that it has these brand new stepping motors inside that help it be super smooth and super quiet, and I can confirm this is true. This is as fast as any AF lens I've tested on the Burano and FX3, and it is super quiet. I put my ear right next to it and I literally cannot hear a thing at all. I've tried forcing it to make noises and stuff, and maybe I'm missing a trick here, but for me it is just silent, and the lens is just snappy and great. In my opinion, if you are a video first shooter and you're in the market for an 85mm or any other focal length zoom lens, and it is the AF issue choosing you to spend more on a Sony, not getting into the image quality, but if it's just an AF issue, then I would not choose the Sony for that reason. As from my experience, I don't notice any improvements. So here we have some test footage in Resolve. There is a mix here between FX3 and Burano, but I will try and state which camera is which. First up, we have the Burano in 6K, not XOCN, so the XAVCI, so the lower quality. So we are wide open here at f1.4, and to me this looks incredibly sharp. Let's punch into 800% so you guys can see better on YouTube, but as you can see, the center of the frame shows all the little details in the brick here. And moving over to the edges of the frame, it's just more of the same. To say this is wide open and a budget option lens, this is really good performance in terms of sharpness. It is sharp right up to the corners, and that is wide open at f1.4. Something I am noticing here though is we are getting pincushion distortion. I did fix this earlier. You can see here, it's the smallest, tiniest amount. It's like 0.016 in Resolve here to fix that. I mean, it's such a minor amount that you'll probably not even notice it unless you are filming really kind of straight line patterns. And then even so, it's a super easy fix. Then there is some vignetting here that it becomes visible when we step the lens down to f2. So as you can see here, moving back, this is f1.4. That's f2. You can see the edges just kind of even out the light. This is outdoors, so there should be no darkening around the edges of the frame. I would say that this is kind of one of the weaker sides of being at f1.4 is the vignetting, but it's not too bad that it's unusable. And sometimes the vignette looks good. Maybe you would shoot f2 and add a vignette back in anyways. And f2 can fix it if you really do not want it. Again here, I just got a quick example to show you how sharp this lens actually is. So this is just a shot of the building across the road from my studio. Punched into 1000%, which is totally extreme and never going to happen in video in the real world. But you can read this sign that says Wetherspoons. It's like a popular chain pub here in the UK. But yeah, just for perspective, keep in mind that sign is readable, and we reset the image. Look how small that sign is inside the image. For video, this lens is as sharp as you would ever need. Looking at chromatic aberration, all lenses do suffer from chromatic aberration. It's just how refined, like controlled it is, and what kind of colors you're dealing with. And they normally appear in high contrast situations. So a really commonplace is when you're outside, filming the sky would be on branches and stuff that is in the shadow with the bright sky behind them. So yeah, if we punch into 800% and really pixel peep, we can see again just how sharp this lens is. Look at the detail for video, 800% crop. And I am seeing some purple. It's really well controlled, so I'm not sure how obvious it's actually going to be when it hits YouTube after compression, but just along here, there's a bit of purple fringing. Just here. I would say this is like a B+ or A. You probably can get a little bit better than this, but This is right up there with one of the most controlled chromatic aberrations I've seen. So here's my ugly mush with a torch in my hand. The reason I'm on low power mode here in the torch is because I want to prove something. I'm shining a torch directly down the barrel of the lens. Kind of really unrealistic situation. It's very unlikely that when you're capturing footage or even photos, there would be a light kind of parallel on down the barrel. It would normally be from above or something like that. But it is so well controlled. This is probably one of the best kind of lens flare controls I've seen. Just look how well the contrast is in my eyes, even though I'm blasting the torch directly down the barrel. But here, this is on high power mode, so I can whack that torch up to full power, and we do start getting some flaring. But again, this is from my testing with Cine lenses and Sony lenses and Sigma lenses. This is right up there with some of the best kind of controlled. If you're someone who does not want lens flares in your footage or photos, then this is really good for you as it's super well controlled. Let's take a look at depth of field and the orbs. Being at 85mm F1.4, you obviously can get some really massive bokeh. The orbs are just really prominent, which is great, and they're really well controlled. As you can see here, just looking at these, we just zoom in a little bit. This is super round, really kind of round shape. And also none of that onion. Sometimes you get like layers inside the onioning. None of that is showing. It's really smooth, clean and round. Coming over to the edges of the frame, I do put it on the edges at some point. You can see here, you can see over on the edges here, you do get a bit of oval, and this is pretty normal with most lenses as well. I would say that's an A to A plus for how oval that is at f1.4. It's really well controlled. You can see we're getting some of that oval in over this side now. This is a great example of just how clean and circular these can be and how they get a bit of oval to the edges. And stepping down to f2, you can see pretty much solves it. They over here on the edges, they are much more circular. So if you did not want that oval, which I personally like the look of oval to the edges, if you wanted the fully round orbs, then you just step down to f2 and you're still going to get plenty of depth at full frame 85mm f2. Finally, focus breathing. This one for me is where it kind of shows that it's a photographer first lens, as focus breathing is not great. I would say it's kind of a C to C plus to B, somewhere around that range. You can see here, look how the rectangle is growing. It's getting bigger and smaller. I'm not zooming, this is not a zoom lens. This is a prime. So it's all just focus breathing, making that grid on the wall get bigger and smaller. Something I will say though is that the most of the focus breathing is at the further end of this lens. So if it's stuff closer to the lens, you'll get much less. And something that's quite disappointing is Sony do this thing where they purposely block third-party lenses from using focus breathing compensation in camera. So you are out of luck with this lens, and that is a benefit of if you went for like the G Master F1.4 The colours and contrast of this lens are really good. I would describe them as kind of modern. Use words like controlled and clean. You're going to be able to use this lens across a variety of projects. It's not like going to do anything crazy on you or do any crazy flares or any character, anything like that. It's just sharp and tactile. And that serves a purpose for so many people, as a lot of us don't just shoot one style of project. So a lens like this is kind of invaluable. And just pulling it back to what I mentioned before about getting the mist filter inside the box, because this lens is so sharp and clinical and clean, if you really want to add a bit of character, you can pop that mist filter on the lens and it's great. It works, it lifts the contrast a bit and blooms the highlights, does all that stuff you'd expect, and gives the lens a bit of character mixed with how well this lens performs anyway. It really is a great combo. Lenses like this Aurora are my favourite type of lenses to review, simply because we have all seen great lenses from Sony with the G Masters, from Canon and Lumix Panasonic. What we have not seen though is people challenging the concept of value, thinking how can I make one of those great lenses and bring it down so it is more affordable. And the only winner in that scenario is us consumers. It's a pretty amazing balance between price, build and function, with great image performance to go. along with it. If you're in the market for an 85mm on a budget, then this is definitely an easy recommendation for me. And I'm super excited to see where SIRUI go with the rest of the Aurora lineup. 35, 24, I cannot wait. And if you want to see me using this Aurora lens in the real world on some of my projects, watch this video here.